Howdy, you sexy bastards. On this fine afternoon, I'm talking more about the messages to those born rich, thoughts and ideas about how to handle being born into wealth responsibly and not squander that money and also not use it in a stupid or destructive way. Today, I'm conducting an analysis of somebody I know who was born into a pretty unique situation. I don't know to what extent we could all really relate to this individual or his circumstances, but I think looking at his situation, some of the decisions he's made allows for like a nice case study to talk about some of the ideas that I've been talking about in here. So I'm gonna call him Tom because it'd be kind of like a dick move to just like, not come up with like a fake name. So Tom here inherited $500,000 right off the bat when he was like 12 or some shit. And he has made some wise decisions, and he's made some unwise decisions along the way, and in the way that he's handled this. And obviously, inheriting that kind of money at such a young age and kind of being able to decide what you do with it at the age of 18, 19, 20 is a difficult situation to be in. Obviously, a blessed situation to be in, but you also have to be... you have to have a degree of wisdom to navigate that well and to not squander it and to not let that money run your life. So the first thing that I want to say is something wise that he did, because I really respect him for doing this. Basically, he illiquidized his money by putting it into assets. So he essentially just bought a condo that cost 500 grand, put his money in there. He didn't have the ability to go spend it and squander it. That's smart as fuck, man. When we're 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, when we're young, we're going to spend our money on some dumb ass shit. We're going to spend our money on like things that are flashy, things that look cool, look nice, on girls, on this, on that. Like, it's just not, so on alcohol, on drugs, like all this bullshit, on like going to fucking crazy parties, right? Like, we're not going to use this money wisely. To some extent we can, and some people will. It's not to say that if you're young and you have a lot of money, you're necessarily going to make unwise decisions, but I think it is reasonable to say that if you're young and you have a lot of money, you should put a lot of that money into assets so that in your young stupidity, you don't go and waste it all. And that's the first thing he did, and it was a great decision, especially when looking at the unwise aspects of his life, which is he dropped out of college, which isn't necessarily the worst thing. I'm a big proponent of saying like, fuck you, college, you ain't shit. And frankly, college ain't shit. But he didn't use his time necessarily wisely when he dropped out. Now he was in a different situation where his parents weren't supporting him to the same extent that mine were with me being in college. So he had to have a job outside of college. Now in this job, he started to progress, and it's essentially become a full-time job, and he's making a good amount of money from it. That's great. That's also, honestly, a wise decision on his part to some extent. However, the way that he's spending that money is not wise. He has like 3 or 4 cars at this point, and these are not like assets. I wouldn't necessarily see a car as an asset because insurance costs money. It's breakable. Like, it's definitely more breakable than a fucking house. And I've seen some of the cars that he's buying, and they ain't assets. And also it deteriorates. So a house is going to grow over time. Its value is going to grow over time depending on where you buy it. Property is going to grow with time, or property value is going to grow with time, generally speaking, especially when you look at long run. Granted, they have like dips and shit, but whatever. Whereas when you look at a fucking vehicle, its value is going to depreciate over time. So it's not necessarily a safe place to keep your money. So he's buying these cars, some of them because they're fun, some of them because they're cool, some of them because fuck it. And that's not a wise use of his money. And I think it's, it definitely like reflects his wisdom in choosing to put his money into assets, because he recognized that he has a weakness in the way that he spends his money, but he should overcome that weakness and not spend his money so poorly in the meantime. He spends a lot of money on alcohol. Essentially, all the reasons that I gave for why you should put your money into assets, he also engages on all of those reasons. So a little bit of a back and forth there. What would I say the alternative should be? Again, I think it was smart of him to put his money into those assets. I'd say, he dropped out of college. Whether that was a good decision or not is what he does with that decision. Being in college, it's what you do with it. Being out of college, it's what you do with it. He also spends a lot of time drinking, partying, sleeping in, and playing video games and watching TV, like an outrageous amount of time doing that stuff. And I've told him that. I've been like, man, you got to get off these fucking sources of entertainment. And don't get me wrong, it's obviously easy to make claims about what somebody should and shouldn't do, and it's a whole different thing to do it. I've certainly been in ruts where I've spent a lot of time on video games and TV that I certainly shouldn't have. But in terms of just looking at it strategically, if you're going to drop out of college, what you got to do is, first off, you need to ask yourself, do I have the discipline and self-control to actually take advantage of my free time? And that's a doozy of a question that you got to ask yourself. It was a question I had to ask myself. This is like a good strategic thinking, I guess, example. When I bought my course, my iOS app development course, I spent like a shit ton of money on this thing. I spent like $7,000. And frankly, I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't already shown to myself that I could accomplish goals, that I could set a goal and accomplish it. Now, this goal was a little bit beyond anything I had fucking accomplished at that point, but I still had enough of a track record for me to trust myself to carry through and know that $7,000 was a good investment. I've also definitely spent money in the past where I invested in things that I was like, I'm going to take advantage of this, and then I didn't have the self-control or the discipline to actually take advantage of that, and that was a poor use of my resources. And as I talked about in the last video, yes, when you're wealthy, you can play this game where you're like Rambo and you're firing from the hip and you're just going to see what fucking hits the target. But you don't want your firing from the hip, you don't want those shots in the dark to fail because you lack self-control or discipline. And I think that's where learning how to aim down sights or aim down the scope comes into play, is it makes you make sure that the factors that lead to failure are not of yourself, but are instead of externals. And that you are capable, you are disciplined, you use your time wisely, you're able to navigate the challenges and obstacles that stand between yourself and a goal with strategic wisdom and clarity. And reading a book like 33 Strategies of War is an excellent way to kind of learn how to navigate that landscape. You want to make sure that when you're firing from the hip, you're not failing because you're undisciplined, because you're spending your time watching TV, or you're spending your time doing bullshit that isn't moving you towards the goals that you've set for yourself. You want to make sure when you fire from the hip at a certain goal that everything along the way from you to that goal, that you handle your shit, that you take care of your shit, and then you just see what the fuck happens. So with app development, it was a shot in the dark because I wasn't sure where it was going to lead, and frankly, I'm still not sure where it's going to lead. I kind of have an idea of where it's led me to. It's led me to where I am, but obviously, but I knew it was some form of progress. I might not have done it. I definitely would have done it if I had more limited resources, but I had the resources to make that shot in the dark worth it. I ended up somewhere valuable. Whether it justifies the cost or not, for the situation that I'm in, it definitely justifies the cost. If I was in a different situation, who knows? But the place that I got justifying that cost is dependent more on external circumstances or factors than internal factors. I did my part. I got through the fucking course. I learned the skill, and I produced something. That was my goal. That's what I fucking did. So what's the alternative for him? Invest that money that he's making. He does invest, and frankly, I'm impressed with him for that. I haven't gotten into investing yet. It's definitely something I should do. Like, he's definitely more on top of his finances than I am. He's got savings accounts. I've just started setting up savings accounts. He's got investments. I got no investments. So that's good. He should invest, and he is. He should build himself. That's the place where I think he's slacking, is he's not building himself. He's spending his time drinking, playing video games, smoking weed. He should also set goals with limited assets. This is also something that I need to practice doing, and I need to learn how to do, is learn how to navigate a path towards a goal with limited resources without using the fire from the hip methodology, and instead learning how to work within tighter constraints. one good example of this is like with app development. Further down on app development, I started just throwing fucking money at this thing and like seeing what the hell would happen, especially in the business side of things, where I did like, what is it? App Store optimization. I applied to this marketing company, and all these things cost a bunch of money, but I kind of had the money lying around, so I just fucking did it. It wasn't like an outrageous amount of money. I think I'd say I spent about $1,000 on this shit in total, but it wasn't like I was educating myself on how to market an app well beforehand. I was just kind of like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what happened. And frankly, I think I wasted quite a bit of money and resources and time doing that because I wasn't aiming down sights. I wasn't willing to slow down. I wasn't willing to build those skills. And so when I kind of like progress into the future, and this should be more like business vlog oriented stuff, but I'm talking about it anyway. When I progress into the future, when I get back into entrepreneurship, because right now I'm taking kind of a break to focus more on college. When I get back into entrepreneurship, I'm going to have to, realistically, I don't know what I'm going to do. You just have to balance all the fucking scales, because it's valuable to hire somebody who has more knowledge about the business side of things than I do, obviously, if I have the money for that. But that's a little bit more firing from the hip. That's more resources. Of course, time is also a resource. I was going to say the alternative is in college, I start studying these business books, and then when I get to entrepreneurship and I want to promote some kind of product, I actually know what I'm doing. I want to get into social media marketing, actually know what I'm doing. And honestly, if I get more knowledge and more skill in the business side of things, then I could probably get by on far less resources and get a lot further. But I was frankly able to get nowhere because I didn't have any skill in the way that I was aiming down my sights towards that target, if that makes sense. What I mean by aiming down sights towards that target is when I was going into marketing, going into all these things, I wasn't doing it from a place of awareness or strategy. I had no strategy. I was just saying like fuck it and doing things that kind of like sounded right. I started posting bullshit on Instagram, but I have no idea how to excel in social media marketing. Started posting bullshit on YouTube, sing about this, sing about that, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so yeah, while he's in the state and he has limited assets, he should see what he can do with these limited assets. I know he has an entrepreneurial spirit. He hasn't been pursuing that. And I think a lot of that has to do with drugs and alcohol. I think a lot of it also has to do with working full time. But he doesn't have, but he should start setting these goals. He has this entrepreneurial spirit. He should be setting these goals and working within confines to see how he can accomplish these goals if he wanted to go down that path. Of course, maybe he just wants to be an employee, and that's fine. But frankly, from the life I've seen him live, he doesn't necessarily want that. You've got to figure out what you want. You've got to set your own goals, though. Then once his skills have been tested, then he uses inheritance to make more money. Once he's proven to himself that he can use his resources wisely, and this is something that I need to do as well, is learn how to use resources wisely. And then once I inherit money or whatever, then I'll actually be able to make the most of those resources, as opposed to the state that I'm in right now, which is I would probably squander them even if I'm doing my best with them, because my best isn't based on knowledge or skill, especially in the business department. Assets or blue chip blocks, yeah, that's a whole other fucking thing. Honestly, I'd say that's about it for this video. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I kind of feel bad, like, making a video where I'm just like shitting on somebody's approach to life, although there is a lot that he's doing well and right, and I think everyone's doing a lot well and right, and frankly, I'm doing a lot well and wrong is what I mean. I'm doing a lot well and wrong, and that's just the nature of life. So figure out what you're doing well and wrong. I hope this kind of gave a better illustration of what it means to think strategically and kind of the thought process that I use when dealing with money. And obviously I'm super unskilled with money because I've not made shit beyond working construction. So, well, I made a couple of bucks off my app, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, we'll talk on another video. This next video is kind of unorganized, so we'll see if I make that now or if it comes out further down the road. Anyway, farewell folks. Enjoy your day. I don't know, don't be a piece of shit.